Imagine a force so immense, so relentless, it could swallow towns whole. A force that didn't just rise, but erased. 100 years ago, America faced an enemy unlike any other. An enemy born of its own mighty heartland. This wasn't war. This wasn't an invasion. This was the Mississippi River, unleashed. And for one terrifying, unforgettable year, it drowned a nation. Welcome to TSF History, where we dive deep into the stories that shaped us. Today, we're not just recounting history. We are reliving a catastrophe that redefined America's relationship with nature, power, and itself. The year was 1927, and the Great Mississippi Flood wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a societal earthquake, a brutal expose of racial divides, and a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. Get ready, because the story you're about to hear is more shocking, more human, and more critical than you could ever imagine. For decades, the Mississippi River had been a lifeline, a highway for commerce, a cradle of culture. But it was also a beast, tamed by levees and human ambition. In the winter of 1926-1927, an omen appeared. Relentless rainfall across the Midwest. The Ohio River, the Missouri, the Arkansas, all poured their swollen might into the Mississippi. By April, the river levels were unprecedented. Down in cities like Memphis and New Orleans, a quiet dread began to spread. Engineers, politicians, and ordinary citizens watched the gauge, holding their breath. They believed their levees, those earthen walls of defiance, would hold. They were tragically, catastrophically wrong. On April 21, 1927, the unthinkable happened. Near Mound Landing, Mississippi, a levee section, weakened by weeks of pressure, finally gave way. It wasn't a gentle overflow. It was an explosion. A torrent of water, miles wide, surged inland, ripping through farms, homes, and lives. And that was just the beginning. Over the next weeks and months, more than 140 levee breaks would occur, unleashing a flood that stretched 70 miles wide in some places. The sheer scale was incomprehensible. Imagine standing on a rooftop, watching your entire world dissolve into an endless muddy ocean. This wasn't just a river, it was an inland sea, devouring everything in its path. The numbers are staggering. 27,000 square miles submerged, an area larger than 9 U.S. states combined. Over 700,000 people were displaced, making it the largest internal migration in American history up to that point. The economic damage was astronomical, estimated at hundreds of millions of dollars in 1927 currency, billions today. Crops were destroyed, livestock drowned, entire communities wiped from the map. But behind the statistics were individual stories of terror and heroism. Families climbed onto their roofs, praying for rescue as the water rose inch by agonizing inch. Men and women risked their lives in makeshift boats, pulling strangers from the swirling currents. The tragedy was compounded by the fact that many of the most vulnerable, African American sharecroppers in the Delta, were hit hardest, with little warning and even less support. This disaster didn't just expose America's infrastructure vulnerabilities, it ripped open its racial wounds. As the waters rose, tens of thousands of African Americans, primarily sharecroppers, were forced into emergency relief camps. But these weren't simply shelters. Many were effectively forced labor camps. Black men were conscripted at gunpoint to reinforce levees, often without pay, food, or adequate rest. When the floodwaters finally receded, many were prevented from leaving, held against their will, forced to continue working to pay off imagined debts or to ensure they'd be available for the next planting season. The stories from these camps are horrific. Lack of sanitation, rampant disease, forced segregation, and armed guards preventing escape. This wasn't relief. It was a continuation of systemic oppression, highlighted by the very disaster that should have united a nation. Herbert Hoover, then Secretary of Commerce, was tasked with coordinating relief efforts. While credited with some successes, his administration's handling of the black population in the camps would forever stain his legacy, revealing the brutal realities of Jim Crow America even in its darkest hour.
When the waters finally receded, months later, the landscape was unrecognizable. Towns were buried in mud, fields scarred beyond recognition. The trauma lingered, a deep scar on the American psyche. But out of this devastation came a profound change. The 1927 flood was a brutal wake-up call, demonstrating that America's approach to river management was hopelessly inadequate. The federal government, under President Calvin Coolidge and later Hoover, was forced to act. The result was the Flood Control Act of 1928, a landmark piece of legislation that initiated the most ambitious engineering project in American history, a comprehensive system of dams, reservoirs, spillways, and fortified levees, all overseen by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This act fundamentally reshaped the Mississippi River, attempting to permanently shackle the beast that had caused so much destruction. It marked the birth of modern federal disaster response and large-scale infrastructure planning. The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a crucible that forged a new America. It exposed the raw power of nature, the deep fissures in society, and the extraordinary resilience of people forced to rebuild their lives from scratch. It taught us that no matter how mighty our ambition, nature always holds the ultimate power. And it forced us to confront the uncomfortable truths about who truly bore the brunt of our nation's catastrophes. What are your thoughts on this incredible, tragic chapter of American history? Have you heard stories from your own families about this flood? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as shocking and informative as we did, please give this video a like, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to TSF History for more deep dives into the past. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another untold story. Until next time, keep exploring history, because the past always holds lessons for our future.